Okay, great.
Where you been, Bob?
Yes, that's a good question.
Put it in on Thursday.
Okay. Hi.
214.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're going to begin in the Siddur Lev Shalem. We're on page 214. We'll begin with Shabbat Mincha.
אשרי יושבתך עוד יכלו חסלה. תהילת אדוני ידבר פי, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד. ואנחנו נברך ים, את אבי עולם, הללויה. לציון, גואל לשם השם יעקב. הודה קדוש, יושב תהילות ישראל, וקרא זה אל זה, ואמר, קדוש, 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 אני צבא מרץ כבודו. ותישאני רוח וישמע אחרי כל רעש גדול, ברוך דבר אדוני ממקומו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. יבטחו בך יודעי שמך, כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני. אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויאדיר. יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה. ואלמד יברא קירותי, וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון אל יום יכון. ובחיית כל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב, אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה, מברך נרם על מי אלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר וירומם וינשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קודשה בריחו. אלא מכל ברכתה ושירתה ותשבחתה ונחמה תמירה בעלמה ואמרו אמן.
You turn to page 218. Once the ark is open, and after we say Baruch Shanatan, we'll pause for a moment so we can say Shechianu the first time that we're opening this ark all together. Page 218.
פנה תפילתי לך אדוני את רצון, אלוקים ברוב חסדך, הנני באמת אישך. ויבנסו אהרון ויאמר משה, קומה אדוני ויחוצו אויביך, וינוסו משנאיך מפניך. מציון תצא תורה, ובארנה מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. Arms, we'll all say together, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו למען הזה.
גדול אדוני איתי, רמה שמו יכתב. אדוני גדולה, וגדול אדוני
שמיים ובארץ, אדוני ממלכה, והמנתיל כל לרוב, הוא אדוני אלוהים, וישתחוו לאדון רגליו קדושו, הוא אדוני וישתחוו לאר קודשו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו.
If you'd like to follow along with the Torah reading, you can follow along on page 318 in the back of the small Siddur Sim Shalom.
Big one.
And time will be on 1202.
1202. Great.
What page, babe?
1202.
Oh, it's in the Chumash and in the back of the weekday Slim Shalom.
Yeah, Gabby, that would be great. Okay, but Jamie, I'll Gabby from over here.
Great.
Sorry, I'm all over the place.
Unless Joy, did you want to get by?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay, great. It does. So, will you get by over there, please, and I'll
Yeah.
take it from here? Okay, great. Thank you.
I'll try to find the page for.
1202, I believe, and other. Okay. Anybody have any yard sites or special occasions this week in particular?
My grandmother's yard site.
No.
Your grandmother- Okay, great. So, Brant, you've got something going on?
Yeah, my father's yard site.
Okay, so why don't you take the first Aliyah? And
Until
please,
the 20th.
Yeah, but we do it early.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Early.
you can take the second Aliyah page, and then anybody else who's got a special occasion? Yeah, it does. So third Aliyah, okay? Okay, great.
Nice.
Wonderful. בזמן קרוב ויחלום, פליטתנו פליטת עמו, בית ישראל לכנו חסר רחם מן רצון, ונאמר אמן הכל הבו גודל, לאלוהינו שנו כבוד לתורה יעמוד.
Baruch ben
Baruch.
ben Chaim v'Chana.
בן חיים וחנה לעלייה הראשונה, ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו.
Baruch et Adonai Hamavarach. Baruch Adonai Hamavarach le'olam ba'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bacharbanu mikol amim v'natan lanu et Torto. Baruch atah Adonai notena Torah.
Amen. Bezot habracha asher berach Moshe ish Elohim et bnei Yisrael livnei moto vayomar Adonai misinai bav zarach misair lamo hofia mehar paran v'atame rivavo kodesh mimino ishtat lamo af chovev amim kol kedosha v'yadecha v'hem tu kula raglecha yisam midabrotecha Torah tzivalanu Moshe morasha kilat Yaakov Vahivi Shirun melech mitasef Rashi Am Yachad Shiftei Yisrael Yechi Reuven v'Yal Yamod V'hi Mutav Mizpar V'zot Yehuda V'yomar Shema Adonai Kol Yehuda V'lamot V'enu Yadav Rav Lo V'yezer Mitzarav Tiyeh.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayolam natah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai notena Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Tamad. Do you want a Hebrew name?
She knows it.
Okay, I thought you might know.
I know by heart.
Okay.
To the stamps.
What's your Hebrew name?
Ora, Rachel, Zachava, mother's name.
Ora
Two-
Chabad.
Ora, Rachel, Zachava, and mom's name, Devorah, Miriam Kettler, grandmother, Giddle.
We're good with mother. Okay.
Giddle.
Vatvorba, Valiashniya. Excellent.
And no it was.
Show you where to touch your kids.
I'll help you fever, babe.
Okay, and just put this on.
Yep.
Okay.
After you kiss the word.
Baruch
No,
Hu
wait,
et-
no,
oh,
I have
Touch
to
the
kiss.
card first. There you go.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bata banu mikol amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ulalevi Amar to Mechav Urecha Lish Chasidecha Asher Nisito B'Masa Tirivehu Amem Riva HaOmer Liaviv Ulimo Lo Ritiv V'etechav Lo Hikir V'epanav Lo Yada Leda ki shamru imratecha uvritecha yinsoru yaru mishpatecha Yaakov v'toratecha Yisrael yasimu ketorah be'apecha v'chalil al mizbechecha barich Adonai chelo ufo al yadav tirtzeh mechatz modnayim kamo umisanav minikumun Levinyamin amar didid Adonai yishkon lavetach alav chofef alav kol hayam uven ketefav shachein.
And you kiss where you left. Where you stopped.
Okay.
So right there. And then
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei dalam lanu natan dodotenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Hamad,
Will be
Avacharayu Moledet. Anat bat Ashraf Babajan Lali Ashley Sheet.
Page 1205, verse 13.
You have to kiss it over first.
Kind of touch and kiss here.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Okay, it's Yosef.
Yosef Amar Mevorechet Adonai Artso Mimeget Shamayim Mital Umitahom Rovetz Atachat Mimeget Umimeget Tuot Shamesh Umimeget Gerish Rachim Umirosh Harekedem Umimeget Givot Olam Umimeget Eretz Umloa Urtzon Shochnis Tavota Lerosh Yosef Ulkat Kod Nazir Echav Bechor Shoro Hadar Lo Bekarnei Re'em Karna Vahem Amim Yinagach Ach Yachtav Asei Aretz Vehem Rivot Ephraim Vehem Alfei Menashe.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Hamad, Hamad, AJ, can I borrow you to the Galila and also to kind of help us out with not getting a very heavy hagra? Samad, Hagolele, please rise as we lift and wrap the Torah. Let's wait till she's here.
Right, yeah. No.
Torah,
Asher Samoshe, Livnei Bnei Yisrael, Adonai,
Miyad Moshe, He's Chaim Hila Machazikim Ba, Tomei HaMeushar. He's Chaim Hila Machazikim Ba, Tomei HaMeushar. Derach Echad Darchei Noam, Bechol Netivot Shalom. Bechol Netivot Shalom. Yai nai nai, yai nai nai nai, yai nai 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 nai, yai nai 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 nai. Please remain standing as we return the Sefer towards the Ark.
We're going to do Elamales on Shiva?
We're not do Amalis on Shabbat Shiva.
Okay,
Thank you. You should go up. And Nick's gonna take the, Nico's gonna take the
One year to the next.
Torah.
Thank you.
Okay, great. And then, we'll continue on page 221.
221, yeah.
Page 221.
Kelu et Shem Adonai, ki nishkav shemo levado. Yuze melech hakavod, Adonai tzvaot hu melech hakavod Selah. Unochai yom hashuvah, Adonai vavot alfei Yisrael. כי לכך טוב נתתי לכם, תורתי אל תעזבו, עץ חיים כי למאחזים בה, כתומכי המיושר. דרכיך דרכי נועם, וכל נתיבותיך שלום. השיבנו נא אליך, ונשוב חדש ימינו כקדם.
The service continues on page 222 with Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
ועלמד יברק יותה וימליך מלכותה בחיי חון וביום אחרון ובחיי כל בית ישראל. פגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן. שמי רבה וברח ולמד מעליה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר וירמם ינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קודשה בריחו. ואלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן באלמה ואמרו אמן.
Amen. The whispered private Amidah begins on page 223. Please recall that there are 4 insertions and 1 change at the end of a blessing. All of them are marked on Shabbat Shuvah. If you've not yet completed your own private Amidah, please continue at your own pace. The repetition begins once more on page 223. When we get to each of the portions that are marked for Shabbat Shuvah, we'll anticipate Nico's reading of those verses by whispering those, and then he'll follow that all the way through the end of the Amidah. We can remain standing, for those who are able, through page 225, and at the end of the Kedusha, with the special blessing for the season, HaMelech HaKadosh, we can be seated. So we're on page 223.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה.
זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, כותבנו בספר החיים, למען חולם חיים.
זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוקים החיים. מלך חוזה ופוקר ומשיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני. מגן אברהם ופוקר שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומק נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדום מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך אב הרחמן, זוכה יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדשים אותו בשמי מרום, כך כתוב ביד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך על הארץ כבודו, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, ודברי קודשך כתוב לאמור. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, לחי ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ונצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו, ובינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, המלך הקדוש. אתה אחד ושמך אחד, ומי כמך ישראל גול אחד בארץ, תפארת גדולה ותרד ישועה, יום מנוחה וקדושה לעמך נתת, אברהם נגל, יצחק ירנן, יעקב ובניו ינוחו בו, מנוחת אהבה ונדבה, מנוחת אמת ואמונה, מנוחת שלום ושלווה והשקט ובטח, מנוחה שלמה שאתה רוצה בה, יכירו בניך וידעו כי מאיתך כי מנוחתם, ועל מנוחתם יקדישו את שמך, אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו. ורצה במנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך, סבנו מטובך, ושמחנו בשובתך, ותן ליבנו לעובדך באמת, והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון שבת קודשך, וינוחו בה ישראל, מקדשי שמך, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש את שבת. רצה אדוני אלוהינו, בעמך ישראל ותפילתם, והשבת עבודה לדביר ביתך, ותפילתם באהבה תרבה ברצון, ותהי רצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך, תחזינו עינינו, ושובך לציון ברחמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, המחזיר שכינתו לציון, מודים אנחנו לך. הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך, והמרחם כי לא תמה חסדך מעולם קווינו לך, ועל כולם נתברך ויתרומם שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד.
טוב לחיים טובים כל בני בריתך.
וכתוב לחיים טובים כל בני בריתך, וכל חכמים ידעוך סלע, והעלו את שמך באמת, אל ישועתנו בעזרתנו סלע, ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך לכנה להודות. שלום רב ישראל עמך, וכל יושבי תבל תשים לעולם, כי אתה הוא מלך אדון לכל השלום, וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך אל ישראל בכל עת וכל שעה בשלומך. בספר חיים ברכה, בשלום ופרנסה טובה, ניזכר וניכתב לפניך, אנחנו כל עמך בית ישראל, אחים טובים לשלום, ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום. יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה כיותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביום אחרון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה בברך אל עלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר וירמה וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. תיקבע שלא תהון ורב ותהון לכל ישראל לקורמה והון בשמיה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו בכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ברמיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו בכל ישראל וכל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו חיי הרצון ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר היה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
Lead us in Mourner's Kaddish on page 232, a reminder that we are in the season of adding an extra Le'ela.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קיותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ועלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו. לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל וכל יושבי תבל ואמרו
Amen. Yesher Koach Nico on leading us. Yesher Koach to everyone who participated, especially to Marshall for laning for us. We're going to take a pause so that we have an opportunity to get a little nourishment, grab a bite to eat, and then have a seat and we'll do some learning together. Thank you, Ellen.
Why did they change it?
The old one was tired and broken and needed replacing. It's been time for a while. Now we have a new one in.
Alright. Where are we gonna put you guys so that mommy can teach in peace?
I don't know.
Are you gonna find a spot at the table that's quiet?
She usually sits quietly at the table the whole time I'm teaching. I don't know if
Yeah,
you
but I
can.
read.
Usually read, yeah. How was your play date? Did you also get to come in for a minute?
Marnie didn't. She said it would be just that.
No, I know. I'm saying you get to go in when you came to pick you up.
Yeah.
Alright. Looks like it was full
It's all
house.
full house, yeah. Maybe you want to go sit on the stairs and eat?
On the stairs, you said?
We've been on the stairs for a while.
Okay.
Do you wanna sit on the floor over there as a picnic?
I don't know what I'm gonna do for the next like half an hour.
Up to you guys.
Whatever it is, we need to be out of mommy's way.
Yep.
Yes, you're gonna be on the stairs.
Well, the field was locked.
That makes sense. Was the gym locked?
I didn't check.
Security guards outside. You can have to be let onto the field right now. You don't want to?
There's also nothing to do. Like, it's just chairs.
Not sure. Yeah, but there's some.
Yes.
Okay. I love you guys. See you in a little bit.
We're a Pac-12 family, which is a Pac-12. My wife went to Cal, I went to UCLA, my son went to Washington, my daughter went to Oregon, my brother went to Stanford, my mother went to Cal. It doesn't exist. The Pac-12 doesn't exist.
She bought everything.
By the,
I think she bought the whole carton.
I don't know.
But I do love the book. The book is remarkable. And it just, I got it on Amazon for about, probably $14. And it ain't bad. It doesn't bad to buy a book. Okay, so this is, does this begin?
I figured out a way to get on the camera.
It's the real.
You're good. Well, I have time to text my friends because it's ending at like 7:30. 10.
Me too. Love this time of year. This is my favorite time of year.
Yeah, it's really nice. More time to chill. But also, you have more time to actually enjoy certain things.
No longer make hasty.
Now you're talking to somebody who grew up in that and got out of
California College of Los San Francisco, because they say Hastings participated in the Cherokee Indians.
And I am happy.
But it's not as simple as
I'm not I think it was in the slide that
That is. That's Ella. Who's not the video anymore. This is Janet. There you go. No, he's doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go, I'm basically.
She'll be excited about some next year. Oh, she does.
But you got it.
she like put that in a statute. So the statute's evidence the contract. But the state
Hasn't been. She's got to learn now that it's awesome. So that when she gets there, she's wonderful too. She's in fourth.
state constitution. State abridgment.
Great. She's got my. Yeah.
She is.
Yeah. She's not.
State can just breach its
It's my favorite. It's my favorite. I love 9 to 11. It's
Yeah.
I love the kids at any age, but I love in general playing with kids at that age. That's so fun.
It is. So enjoy it.
Thank
Got
you.
your book. The book thief. Have you ever heard of the book thief?
Yeah.
Have you ever watched the movie?
I don't think so. What? You know what? Read it.
I thought it was by the music by John Williams.
Okay. When was the movie made, or when was the book written?
So I'm reading the Schindler's List.
Definitely not. I've been eating lunch at like 3.
And
I
actually-
don't know. Our lunch started at like 3.
This is really interesting.
By the time we get
I've
home
seen
from
the
school,
movie, I haven't read the
have
book
guests
yet.
come over, it's like,
But I have
feel like I have to eat lunch, I can't eat yet. What should I do?
And I have it on iTunes as well. So I bought the audiobook on iTunes.
And it was like a really good lunch.
They like singing it with the audio. So I'm actually,
Meatloaf.
yeah, it's like amazing.
Good.
Real Shabbos feeling.
Real salad, exactly. Now I'm super full.
It's like you're going back in time. But they just came out with another book on Amazon. So they're.
It does that cart's upside down, one over there, what's up with that?
I think there's a wheel that's been broken. And my theory is that they finally fixed with a little bit of wood glue, the part that it was wiggly, and that it's drying like that.
Oh, okay.
This is my theory.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, it is upside down.
makes sense to me.
That's new?
No, just fixed. But I think it's drying upside down. Yeah, I noticed because that's my favorite. That's where when I come to morning minyan, and generally speaking, that is my makom kavu. I like to stand in the corner and daven at that cart. But it's been broken for a few weeks, so
Wow, yeah, I'm glad they fixed
it's a
it.
metaphor for the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, the Buddha. Wow.
I think that's your coffee cup. I was just moving it out of the way of people running by. If it was the one at the corner, yeah, it was just about to get knocked off. Yeah. Great.
Fast doesn't start at sundown, does it?
What's that?
Fast doesn't start at sundown, does it?
Nope, it's sun up to sundown. The two exceptions to that are Tish B'Av and Yom Kippur. Yeah, sun up. And it because of the time of the year, it'll be a short fast because of the
5:30 to 5:30.
exactly.
The time difference. Well, the time changes.
The time's changing tomorrow?
No, but because of the but because of where we are in the year, the fast is really short.
Right.
Because it's a month later than usual, so since it's a sun up to sundown,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
the days are getting shorter.
exactly.
Yeah.
No.
No, but tomorrow's a minor fast day. Yeah, Tzom Gedalia. Yeah.
Bob and Lena used to say, "Well, you didn't fast for me, so I'm not fasting for $2."
Classic line, classic Bob. What's that?
You have a siyum that
Sounds right to my ear.
Huh?
when the fast.
We should. It's interesting. There are certain days that we do siyum to get by, and certain that we don't. We don't generally do that on Tzom Gedalia, but my theory is because people are too tired to do a siyum from too much shul. Yeah, I'll just fast. It's fine. Okay, so I figured that we wouldn't do a normal learning, not a typical learning, not a full source sheet of learning. For the intrepid and loyal people who make it all the way through the High Holy Day season and then also come to Sudash Shlit to learn. I know that a lot of Torah has come at you in the last few days. I feel really lucky during the High Holy Day season, by the way, that because I'm not generally responsible for producing a lot of the Torah, I also feel like I'm marinating in a lot of beautiful and interesting Torah. I've gotten to hear Josh out from 2 of my fellow clergy, today from Dr. Erica Rothblum, some really beautiful Torah. And I thought that today the learning that we might do, since we should do something learning, should we do some learning on something that's sacred, would be on the topic of new liturgy coming out of the war in Israel. And the reason this came up is because I was on sabbatical for 3 months. And during that time while I was on sabbatical, I had 3 projects that I've been, Brant blinked and missed it, and I came back. During that time, or as my son says, blunk. He says it's the past tense. I blunk, and I missed it. So you blunk and you missed it, Brant. And during that time, I had 3 projects. I was working on my forthcoming book on minding ritual gaps. I'm 4 chapters in. My editor is great and dogged and keeps me working hard. And then I have 2 other projects I'm working on. The new open mikveh in Los Angeles, Ma'aleh Chaim, which is, God willing, going to come over the next few years. The organization's real. The site is TBD. And finally, a project also on lowering the barriers to the expense of producing new Jewish music. And that's a longer term project, but I'm in the earlier stages of that with some amazing national partners. In doing those projects, those were it, so to speak, but those were projects that I chose lishma, of my own accord, discretionary time to be working on. And for the most part, I completely otherwise disconnected from my work as a clergy person. But there was one exception. The book that I'm working on is through the Rabbinical Assembly, to be, God willing, published through the Rabbinical Assembly. And as a part of the relationships that I'm building within that world, I've been in conversation with the very people who are making decisions real time during this momentous, historic, traumatic time in Israel about what we do with our liturgy, how we adjust it, what we produce. And in particular, what I want to mention is that validity aside, or people's beliefs one way or another about what we should be praying for, one of the few things that keeps us together, uniform, not just nostalgic, but feeling anchored as a movement, is a sense of uniformity about our liturgy. The Rabbinical Assembly itself takes a lot of pride in the publications of our Sidurim. And whether or not you're using the exact same Siddur as another conservative synagogue down the road, the notion is that not only are we reading the same Torah portion as they're reading at Beth Am Shalom Tzedek B'nai something over in St. Louis or Chicago or Florida, not only are we on the same Parsha cycle, but we're actually reciting the same liturgy, and some of the incredibly thoughtful liturgical shifts and changes that are specific to our movement, to the conservative movement, some of which emanate from this very institution, from some really wonderful and great thinkers, many of whom are members of the library Minha. Those changes become universal to the experiences of people who are praying in the setting where that place falls under the umbrella of the conservative movement. And say what you will about movement-based Judaism, where it's coming from and where it's going, in real time, one of the greatest binding factors, synagogue to synagogue, is the notion that when you go into a synagogue, that the Siddur will at least look very familiar, and that the tefillot, the prayers, will also seem familiar too. I find this is particularly important and comes up a lot in the prayers that are built so deeply into our muscle memory, because no matter how infrequently you come to the synagogue, it's the changes to those core prayers that we do most often, most frequently each day, that make a difference if they should be shifted. So for example, the change at the end of the first baracha, the first blessing, at the end of every single Amidah, with the addition of the imahot, of the 4 mothers, which I need to give a lot of credit to, among other people, Rabbi Joel Rembam, for being a great thinker on this front in terms of the defense of the philosophy, the liturgical philosophy, how it wound up the way that it did in our Sidurim. That chatima, that change, Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah, the notion of just adding that conjoining U and Foked Sarah, represents hundreds of hours of thought, hundreds of spilled pages of ink, of discourse of contemporary rabbis about where it's appropriate and how it's appropriate to change even the most core blessing. And if you go into a synagogue and you are used to saying your whole life one way, Magen Avraham, and there's already a change up at some point in your lifetime, ostensibly the late 90s for many people who have been planted in the conservative movement, that shift to Ufoked Sarah is already a trip up. So the notion that at the very least, that now that you've learned that and it's become core liturgy, if you are a part of the movement that uses Ufoked Sarah and also protects or is the protector of Sarah, that if you've gotten used to that liturgy, that there's a bit of a payoff in the consistency where you go from place to place. Even if there are other legitimate and wonderful ways that our liturgy might be adjusted for the same purpose, to be more inclusive of the important women at the core of our legacy and history, there is a payoff to that consistency. So it's important for there to be liturgy that follows us from place to place and that we can find each place that we go. And this is very difficult in a time of war because of several factors. But number one, when Israel is at war, news is changing in real time and life is changing in real time, which means what we are praying for urgently is also changing in real time. There is one consistent way the Jews have responded to urgent situations in their people. Generally, we'll call them situations of distress. And that is a consistent way of shifting our liturgy to reflect that we are in a moment of distress as a people. Anyone think of at least one way that we do that? Terrible, something befalls our people. We come to Minyan that evening at our synagogue, and what might we do to shift our liturgy in real time? If it's a terrible tragedy that befalls us, El Mali Rachamim could be recited in the appropriate season. And Psalms as well. You put both of those in. So, as Michael points out, Psalms, these 150 poems that are at the core of our canon, right? In the Ketuvim, the part of the Hebrew Bible that contains what we call additional writings. These 50 additional writings, some of them have a fixed place in our liturgy, and we'll look at a couple of things, a couple of places where they get fixed, remind ourselves where they're fixed in our liturgy. But there are specific psalms that are somewhat agreed upon. I'll give you the example, Psalm 121, Esa Einai El Haharim. When I am in distress, where do my eyes go? My eyes, they are lifted to the heavens because perhaps my help will come from God, will come from that place on high, right? That Psalm 121, Esa Einai, is a very common psalm to be gone to. But in a time of war, it might have been that one synagogue added a prayer for Israel and another added Hatikva and another synagogue added Psalm 121. And then also there's a gap between adding that Psalm 121 in a moment of urgency. Today, the news is terrible, and we'll say this today, and we'll say it tomorrow. And now we're in an enduring state of trauma that is deserving of ongoing prayer and is deserving of address with regularity. And what we have to our benefit, I use that word very lightly, but to our benefit, the longer that the situation endures, the more thoughtful time can be given to what the liturgy of this time can be and ought to be. We can give really wonky thought to what verses from our biblical canon we might want to pull on. What liturgy might we want to have in addition to? And to eventually create as best as we possibly can with the hopes that someday, bimhei Yameinu, soon we will not need to use them. Until that time, to have a sense of consistency in liturgy. I was asked to join the committee that writes that stuff. That was my long intro to say that I was asked to join the committee that writes this liturgy, and as a writer and as a liturgist, it's a really meaningful thing to sit among my colleagues who are doing this work. Right? This is the work of the colleagues who also write the pronouncements and the shared statements by our assembly when, God forbid, there's an attempt on the life of the president, or when something awful happens that's a national, just a natural disaster that may or may not be specific to the Jewish people. That group also takes responsibility for the liturgy of, it doesn't have, I don't know if there's even a name. I think the committee is like the Committee on Liturgy for the Conservative Movement. We don't have a name, but it's a committee. And they address situations in real time. And over the past 3 months and change since my sabbatical began, I've noticed that not only are we responding in moments of urgency and of trauma, but we're also trying to do the work of creating that consistent liturgy, of trying to create something so that when you go from place to place, there is a shared sense of liturgy, both for the sense of familiarity of the people who might not always be in the same place from Shabbat to Shabbat, from day to day, but also for the sake of achdut, of unity. Because there is something very powerful about knowing that it's not just your synagogue that's saying Psalm 121 or a prayer, but all Jews across many, many different communities who are saying something. So we're going to look at 2 different prayers. One, I wrote. The other was written by Rabbi Karen Rees-Medwed, who is a wonderful, a remarkable colleague in the movement as well. And you'll see how her prayer differs radically from the prayer that I wrote. We'll look at mine first, and then we'll go to hers, because I don't want to look at mine after hers. It's just really good. Okay, so I'll pass these each direction. Should be enough for each person. And then one other one, too. What's that? No, my spiel is a separate sheet. Okay, great. So you should wind up with 2 sheets in front of you. Okay. One sheet, you should have 2 sheets in front of you. One says Introduction to Hashkivenu, a prayer for Erev Rosh Hashanah, and the other says a prayer for the success of the IDF and peace in Lebanon. Got it? Okay, so we'll look at the Introduction to Hashkivenu first. This is meant to be read in interspersed English and in Hebrew. What we'll do is I'd like for us to read it together through, and then I'll ask you some questions about it and point some things out as well. So we'll read from As Yom Tov Descends, all together. As Yom Tov descends, we stand at the gates with bruised and battered souls. We yearn to ask the unanswerable questions, to gather en masse and raise our voices, to cry out, Avinu Malkeinu Kale Dever, V'cherev V'ra'av Ushvi. Our Father, our King, our Parent, our Ruler, remove from among your people all plagues, all violence, all hunger, all captivity. Here at the precipice of a new year, we plead, may Israel be granted safety and peace under the great tranquil blanket of divine shelter. May the Holy Land be shielded under the watchful eyes of those who neither slumber nor sleep. May Israel be safeguarded by the armor of unwavering allies. May the sounds of thundering rockets be drowned out by the hopeful cries of the shofar. Ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha, spread over us your shelter of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, Holy One of blessing. Hafores sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. The one who unfurls your shelter of peace over us and all your people Israel and over Jerusalem. Okay. So a few questions for you. When is this prayer ostensibly meant to be said? When does it appear this prayer is for? Yeah, for Mari, for a holiday, anytime that we recite Hashkivenu, although as I was pointing out on last night at services, I think it could be added anytime that we offer the prayer for Israel, the fuller prayer for the state of Israel, in which we also engage with this phrase, Ufros alei, in that case, Aleha, Sukkot Shalomecha, and may the shelter of peace be unfurled over Israel as a place. What else tells you when this is for? What hints are you getting, and what season is this specifically for? Yeah, Joey.
Fall.
Well,
Because the holiday Sukkot.
Okay, so there's a lot of references to the notion of Sukkot, right? Of Sukkot and Sukkot Shlomecha, right? And it also engages with Rosh Hashanah. What other context clues are there about when the prayer is meant for? What other liturgy is engaged? Avinu Malkeinu. And when do we say Avinu Malkeinu? High holy days like Rosh Hashanah, the end of Yom Kippur, and on fast days as well. So moments of both distress and also of the high holy days. In this case, I did write at the top the title, A Prayer for Erev Rosh Hashanah. So probably for Erev Rosh Hashanah, but it can be used other times as well. And is this a traditional line from Avinu Malkeinu? Is this in the traditional Avinu Malkeinu? No. Yeah, it is. Sure is. Isn't it interesting how quickly we can look over it? So I went to study Avinu Malkeinu as a core prayer. It is not the full, it's a piskat. It's not the full length of the line, but I break it at a certain place for a certain reason. Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Dever, or Daver, it's possible, V'cherev v'ra'av ushvi. So we're asking God to remove 4 things. Dever v'cherev. Why might I mention Dever and Avinu Malkeinu in this prayer? We got two pieces of liturgy now in conversation with each other. The Hashkivenu and Avinu Malkeinu. What role does Dever play at that? The plague.
Well, that seems to come from Passover, so I'm trying to figure out, it seems you were centering this on the fall holidays, but then pulling the opposite end of the year.
If you want to, you can open up, if you have a Siddur near you, open up to page 45, and I'll read out loud the Hashkivenu for Friday evening. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chayim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. There's your ufros aleinu. V'taknenu be'etzah tova milfanecha. And v'hoshi'enu lema'an shemecha. Give us your etzah tova, your good counsel. Save us for the sake of your name. V'hagein ba'adenu. And then v'haser. Look at that sum omid on Shabbat. Watch over us. V'haser me'alenu, and remove for us. Another word like kale. Oyev, dever, cherev, ra'av, yagon. V'haser satan milfanenu ma'acharenu. So what does this Avinu Malkeinu line have in common with Hashkivenu?
That is to remove these bad things from us.
These specific bad things. Why do you think this is a list of bad things that shows up in Avinu Malkeinu and in Hashkivenu? Dever and Cherev, plagues, the sword, right? Violence at the hands of a sword, Ra'av and Shvi, hunger and captivity.
They were part of the experience of the Jewish people.
This is what happens. You know, Annie Lamott, who I've been reading all summer, they're part of the experience of the Jewish people. And Michael said, I've been reading Annie Lamott all summer. She's an amazing memoirist. And at some point in her early college years, she learned some Nietzsche and decided based on that learning that she wanted to be Jewish. And her friends said, her college like dorm mates said to her, we're going to hire you a bat mitzvah tutor, okay, to this college. We're going to hire you a bat mitzvah tutor. And she said, and the bat mitzvah tutor had many things to teach me. But one of the things that the bat mitzvah tutor wanted to teach me was important questions about what Jews do and do they not do. So she would say to me, do Jews go camping? And I would say, I guess so. And she would say, no, Jews do not go camping because the bad things are already happening to us in here. Why would we go out there and look for more? Right? So that's what I'm thinking of as I think of these are the things that befall the Jewish people eternally.
You have a very interesting optimistic notion that we have to go back to. In the Avinu Malkeinu in our Siddur, he eliminated Avinu Malkeinu Mina Magifa Mina Plate. He eliminated the notion of Avinu Malkeinu, get rid of the plague or prevent the plague from amongst us. And he was so secure that there would not be a plague. A Magifa is a plague in that sense, but a disease plague.
That's right.
That he eliminated it, and lo and behold, we had
So Michael's pointing out, just repeating for those people who are listening through the online means, that we were so sure that we passed the point of plagues being such a global traumatic incident that we want to mention them in Avinu Malkeinu, that it was removed from our current Sidurim, from Siddur Sim Shalom, from Lev Shalem. And then during the time of COVID, many communities went in search of adding that back in. And that's brings me back to what I was going to respond to AJ's point, which is Dever it's really disease. It's not really a plague. Magifah is, there are other words that are more specifically for plague. What's that? It's one of the plagues, which is why we say plague, but it's not really a plague. It's really a disease that's one of the plagues, exactly. So what's the difference, though, now that we're looking at both liturgies, or maybe you're peeking at Hashkivenu, what's here in Avinu Malkeinu that's not in Hashkivenu, and why might I have brought it? Right, so both of the prayers are in the imperative form. One says, our Father, our King, do these things for us. And the other says, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, watch over us, right, guard over us. Both are pleased with the divine, but they definitely have different flavors. I heard somebody say the thing that's in this Avinu Malkeinu line that's not in Hashkivenu is Shevi. It's what? Shvuyim, it's captivity, okay? It's captivity, the shvuyim, the captives, who we've been praying for. So what I'm doing in bringing this in, and I only want to look at this for one more minute, so we can go into the other prayer that I passed out, is that I'm bringing to our attention two pieces of our liturgy that can be in conversation with one another. Hashkivenu, in and of itself, does not mention and guard us from captivity, possibly because of what Rosa is saying, which is that Hashkivenu was a prayer added to our evening liturgy out of the nightly experience of personal fright, kind of walking in the dark of the world, literally walking without street lamps through the world, and guard over us as we as the sun goes down and the world gets dark and a little scarier, watch out for these things. Avinu Malkeinu, however, mentions in that same line and in that same breath, captivity, which is similar to this idea of Magifah, something that for most of Jewish history, for long periods of time, we are able to forget about as something that we need to be worried until all of a sudden it's relevant again. And sometimes those intervals are short and sometimes they're long. I have very strong memories of the years of Gilad Shalit and his family's encampment in Jerusalem, which was still going on at the time when I was living in Jerusalem, both years. And then Shevi was suddenly less relevant after his redemption. It was suddenly less relevant for some years until it wasn't irrelevant anymore, and it was suddenly very relevant again. I want to mention one other thing. The impetus for writing these two prayers, and we'll move to Karen's in just a moment, Rabbi Reese Medwed's prayer as well. The impetus was the impending war in Lebanon, this notion that we didn't know 2 weeks ago what these 2 weeks would look like, and knowing that we might want to have a prayer that turned our eyes to the north of Israel and even further north as well. This is before Iran was even, it was whispers but not shouts of the conversation. So Lebanon was the thing in conversation. So I wanted to invoke the symbolism of Ufros alenu sukat shalomecha for a particular reason. Why are Israelis looking skyward these days?
Because of the rockets, and I assume that this is referring to the Iron Dome and to David's sling and to everything.
Precisely. So the notion is that they're looking skyward at rockets, and that there is an image of a sukat shlomecha, a shelter of your peace, invoking this idea of the kippah, of the domes that exist of protective of airspace protection that have been erected and are ongoing over Israel, and offering this prayer without an explicit reference. It doesn't say, and keep us under the shelter of Iron Dome and David's sling and all of those other specific to this moment. I could have included that too. But instead, I chose to lean into the enduring liturgy, which hints at this notion that sometimes we feel like we're under a protective shelter of God's peace and invokes that imagery.
We feel isolated also. There's a feeling of isolation. I mean, before I came here, I was listening to the news, and Netanyahu has lashed out against France because Macron, he doesn't want France to give arms to Israel because he doesn't want Lebanon to become, as he puts it, another Gaza. Okay, there's a feeling of being isolated, and because this season, this holiday season is also the year anniversary of October 7th, there have been demonstrations around the world. The ones that are getting the publicity are the pro-Palestinian demonstrations.
Right. So,
In Rome, the demonstrators clashed with police pretty severely.
so Rose is pointing out that there is such isolation, such a feeling of isolation in the world to be Jewish, to be someone who cares about and loves Israel, and to wonder what sort of protection will be out there. And sometimes that protection extends to our questions about what our diplomatic ties, what our allies are going to be willing to do, and what they're going to be able to do as a means of protection. And in times of questioning and loneliness, when it comes to wondering about who will protect us, this liturgy, this style of liturgy, of calling out to the divine, not knowing if our question is answerable or not, but calling upon the divine to be a shelter of peace, is a way that our people have time and time again prayed, even when it's meant something specifically different, depending on the era of our history that we're living in. Nico, and then we're going to move to the other prayer.
It's interesting as well, though, because we have so much imagery having to do with much more powerful sort of asks of God. Like we call God Hashem, Adonai Sabaoth, right? Like the sort of like the Lord of War, if you will. So we could have asked for all kinds of things a lot stronger than a sukkah, a castle, something like that. So I feel like this prayer oftentimes points to the step after the war, where it's like, let us be in a time where we can be under the sukkah and we can be in peace. We can be in this fragile structure without a fear of it being destroyed.
So Nico's pointing out that there are so many stronger images that might have been invoked in the original liturgy, and it'd be interesting to find out if there are other girsaot, other versions that call upon different imagery, sort of God's divine palace, or may we be brought under the shelter of something stronger than wings or a sukkah. But as I pointed out last night, as I spoke briefly and teased this teaching, Sukkot are by definition temporary in order to be kosher. And I think that there is an acknowledgement in this prayer, I'm in agreement with you, that shalom is also a temporary thing. Sukkot shlomecha is a combination of two nouns, a sukkah and shalom, that never last. They're not enduring things. They're intermittent, and we have to come back and pray for them again and again. So I'm with you in that, the imagery being like remarkably soft and fragile. I appreciate that word. So we're going to look at this other prayer by Rabbi Medwed, and then you'll forget about how nice my prayer was because hers is so super amazing and cool. And bonus points. I mean, it's just, she's remarkable, and she wrote both the Hebrew and the English. We'll spend a few minutes on it, but I have to point out that there is at least one typo on this page. I'm not going to tell you what kind of typo, but it's like a nerdy, interesting typo. So if your brain likes to go to places to see, it's like the Where's Waldo, there's an interesting typo. See if you can catch it and tell me at the end. Okay? Great. Oh, is it in Hebrew or English? I won't tell you any more than it's a typo that's on the front side of the page, because it's more interesting. The answer is actually more complex than is it in Hebrew or in English. So we'll see what comes of it. Yeah, there's the hints on the first page. So she calls it, first of all, tefillah latzlachat sahal. Again, smichut, two nouns for the well-being or luck, the welfare of the army, the Israeli armed forces. Vishalom Levanon. Okay? So and also peace in Lebanon. She begins with the language Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov. When can we use the Mishaberach language to begin a prayer?
During the Torah service.
We often use it during a Torah service. When else? Blessings of healing, right? It recalls the Mishaberach Lecholim. The answer is that actually Mishaberach Avotenu et cetera, is a wonderfully flexible piece of our liturgy because it's not necessarily utilizing any of the construct of matbeya tefillah, this like fixed liturgy. So this can be said anywhere. Already her prayer is in a much more flexible place. You could offer this at any time. However, I would say it is evocative of the Mishaberach imagery we use often when the Torah is on the table. Mishaberach Avotinu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarar Yikar Rechav Leah. I won't get too into it because I'll get too distracted and we have to turn to Mariv in just a moment. But historically speaking, we've often also called upon other ancestors than these ancestors in particular when it comes to the state of Israel. We've called upon like David and Shlomo and others of our heroic ancestors. I have theories about why that is, but she goes straight to the most familiar, calling upon our ancestors. Hu yavarech et chayalei tzava ha'hagana liYisrael ve'anshei kochot habitachon. Is this language familiar to people?
Yeah, this is standard liturgy for the prayer for Tzal done by the chief rabbinate.
This is the standard liturgy that was set and is done by the chief rabbinate of Israel. That's correct. So kochot habitachon is a way of referring to the other security forces because Tzahal in and of itself doesn't necessarily capture the full picture of who is protecting the state of Israel. Ha'omedim.
Because it's the standard, it's irrelevant at this moment because it has a very interesting mistake there.
Yeah.
It says, Omdim al mishmar etzenu barei Eloheinu nigvul ha'lebanon, from the border of Lebanon. And now since the forces of Tzahal are over the border of Lebanon, the prayer itself has to be altered.
So, as Michael's pointing out, this wasn't the mistake that I was looking for, but it was something I was going to point out.
Is now over the border of Lebanon.
Right. So migvul halavana means from the point of the border. Givul is like a boundary. Lebanon, the ad midbar Mitzrayim, and unto the desert of Egypt. What's the word in English? Umin hayam hagadol ad lavo ha'arava be'abasha ba'avir uvayam. What I will say in defense of Karen in terms of this traditional liturgy is two things. Number one, it's just the language that we use even when our forces have gone over the border into Lebanon, and therefore, maybe it's fine that it doesn't specifically speak to this moment when now we've crossed over the border. Number two, interestingly, is that this really seems to be a somewhat contemporary version of what we call a merism. And a merism is when we say like in Ve'ahavta, in Uvshoch becha uvkumecha is one of the examples of a merism. In your lying down and in your rising up, that you should be praising God. Does that mean literally when you're lying down and when you're rising up? Some of the rabbinic threads seem to think so because they just fixed Shema 2 times a day, but more likely than not, it's poetic language to say we're saying north, south, east, west. We're naming the expanse. It's meant as a poetic merism and all-inclusive and an expansive way of imagining where we are asking for the protection. So that's my thought.
It also adds one thing that we have never had, and if you contrast it with the blessing that we say at the end of the Torah reading during the weekday, because it adds ba'avir in the air.
And in the air.
We haven't made that change when we say Achenu kol beit Yisrael Sarah v'shivya.
So she adds the Achenu at the end, and my guess is when she ends the prayer with Achenu, which comes from our daily liturgy after we put the Torah away, my guess is she got there and then went back and added Avir, the notion of also asking for protection in the airspace, but I'd have to ask her. Our Siddur is not in as advanced in aerospace technology as Israel is. So, okay. So very quickly, because I want to end this over the next minute, I want to point out something that she does, and I'm not going to be able to go through every verse, but I want us to quickly look through the page and see the references that she is pulling upon. So this is this particular moment as there was an impending war in Lebanon. She says, Kol Adonai shaver arazim v'yishaber Adonai et arzei halvanon. When do we sing this? It says right there, Psalm 29, excellent. And when do we sing that? Every week? Right, Shabbat, when we're putting away and also on Kabbalat Shabbat, and Friday night services right before the Chadodi, and then Hagein Adonai al Chayalinu v'Hagber al Hatzlachot Pilatinu b'Tzafon ve'ad Lebanon, and it's interesting they translate it as through Lebanon. It's really up to, anyway, to Michael's point, it's really up to the border. And then she brings in another verse. Skip your eyes down to, as the psalmist in Psalm 29 reminds us, Sadiq Katamar Yifrach Ke'erez Balvanon Yiskeh. Anyone? Where's the mistake?
Yeah, also Kabbalah Shabbat.
Where's the mistake, though? There's a mistake.
Oh, sorry.
It's a very funny mistake. No, it's fine. No, but anyone notice? That's not Psalm 29.
92.
It's Psalm 92. So it's like a copy paste from above, but it's interesting. It's yet another different piece of liturgy that we also say on Friday evenings. Psalm 92, the Psalm for Shabbat, Sadiq Katamar Yifrach Ke'erez Balvanon Yiskeh. And then continues with her own language of Shemor al Kol Maginei Artseinu, all the ones who protect our land. Flip to the other side, Hafked, nurture, she ends the sentence with Ke Arzei Halvanon, that they should thrive as the cedars of Lebanon, invoking that language from Psalm 92. Kishehem nichnasim b'shalom v'chozrim b'shalom, reminiscent of other language that we use of leaving and coming in peace. And then she brings in Psalm 104, Yispeu atzei Adonai arzei Lebanon asher nata, that the trees of God drink to satiation. Is that what we call it? Satiety? No. When you're not thirsty anymore. There's another word. Satiation. Okay, great. But these are the cedars of Lebanon that God planted. So the notion of God's presence being an enduring presence that was planted into Lebanon just alongside the trees. And finally, skipping to the very bottom of the page, since we're running out of time to look at every source, she ends with the liturgy of Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael HaNetunim B'Tzara. This is the exact unchanged liturgy, copy and paste, the traditional liturgy that we use from day to day. I'll end with this because I'm already over the time I would normally teach in. 3 points that I want to make about liturgy. Number 1, anyone could have written these prayers beautifully and they would have been just as authentic and valid as they are because I wrote one and because my colleague, Rabbi Karen Rees-Medwed, wrote the other one. It's not about the provenance of where a prayer comes from. It's the content of the prayer that matters. And one of the things I'd like for you to take away from this is that the prayers that we are offering in this time derive their meaning from the spontaneous or contemporary pull that they take on our modern situation. They do a dance between the traditional liturgy and the moment that we're sitting in. We are all permitted to be inventive in our prayer, and also to go back to the more traditional liturgy so that we can feel we're rooted in that liturgy as well. Number 2, liturgy is both flexible and inflexible. Michael made a couple of really salient points along these lines. Already there's something almost passé about the language here because it seems to not acknowledge the current situation. But of course, everything that's printed in this book is passé in one way or another. And part of the job of the Jewish people is to dance the dance, again, a value tension between wanting to constantly create contemporary liturgy that addresses our current situation and leaning on the liturgy of our past and finding and deriving new meaning in it, such that when we sing Achenu B'nai Yisrael, that we get from that a different meaning than someone got 10 years ago, because here we are and here we sit and we are hearing the news that we're hearing today. The final thing that I'll add is that the job of liturgy is the job of writing new liturgy. It's an endless project. There is no end to writing liturgy, and the idea that we print liturgy in books so that people have access to it is a wonderful one, but that shouldn't distract from the fact that liturgy itself is an ever-evolving plane, and that it is always kosher for us to be looking for new ways to praise, to beg, to ingratiate ourselves, to acknowledge the moments that we're in. The authenticity lent to those prayers comes from the way that they root themselves in other pieces of our canon and of our liturgy, and that lends them a sense of kedusha, a sense of holiness as well. And I really do pray for the day where we're no longer scrambling to write new liturgy that addresses new situations day in and day out. Yes, Brant.
Should we be praying for offensive war?
For what?
Offensive war.
Right.
See that,
Right.
this definition of victory that I'm kind of
Yeah.
playing with here,
Yeah.
because victory is a loaded term.
Great.
In an insurgency sort of conflict. And all I'm saying is that I don't know what they mean by victory. I don't know what the Israeli army means by victory. I'm not even sure what the American army means by victory sometimes. That's a loaded term.
It's a very loaded term, yeah.
With the protective shield concept of prayer than I am with going into other people's land and praying for them to be victorious. And that's what I'm saying is it's somewhat ambiguous.
So given that Shabbat is about to end, and I want to turn to Mari before it's too late to turn to Mari, I'll say this in response to Brant's question, which is a brilliant one and a very difficult one. What is our role in praying for offensive warfare? And I think the answer is this. There is a reason that these prayers are so long and invoke so many different verbs of guardianship, shelter, protection, etc. Because we don't even know what we're asking for. Not only do the armed forces not know what they're asking for, we don't really know what we're asking for apart from peace. Along that way, we're asking for whatever we can humanly understand we're asking for. Guard the forces. Frustrate the designs of those who would come and try to entrap and ensnare the innocent. Release people who are bound in captivity. The things that we do feel sure about. But I think that the less sure we are about what it means to pray for success, the longer our prayers get to try to figure it out and tease it out. The day that we can come up with one idea of what success looks like, then Mashiach will come. Okay, so we're gonna turn to Mariv.
So the defense minister of Israel can't agree on it, so how
Yeah.
are we gonna come up with definitions?
So we're gonna move right into Mariv. Do people have bread? I literally don't know what the food was. They have bread. Okay, all right. Quick Zimun, and then we'll pray Mariv. Shir Hamalot. Great. Shir Hamalot b'shu Adonai et shivati Yonayinu kevomim Az Yimales Chakinu Ushaninu Rina Az Yomeru Vagoim Yigdil Adonai Asoti Meile Yigdil Adonai Asoti Mainu Ayinu Semechim Shuv Adonai et Shivitenu Kafigim Ba'negev Azorim Bedima Verina Yitzoru Halok Yelechu Bacho Yosei Meshech Hazara Bo Yavo Verina Nosei Alumotav
Copyright of RF. Hisham Adonai Baruch Metav Elam B'Shu Copyright of Rechel Nisha Halam Mishalo. Rechel Nisha Halam Mishalo Tvo Chayin Baruch Shemo Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Hazan et Haolam Kulo B'Tuvo B'Chem B'Chesed U'Rachamim Hu Noten Lechem L'Chol B'Char Ki L'Olam Chasto U'Tuvo Hagadol Tommy, L'Chasar Lanu, Ve'Chasar Lanu, Mazo, L'Olam Va'et, Bavur Shemo HaGadol, Ki Wazan U'Parnes L'Kol, U'Meitiv L'Kol, Mehin Mazon, L'Chol Beriotav Asher Bara, Baruch Atah Adonai, Hazan et HaKol.
As we wrap up with Birkat Hamazon, we'll turn back to our Sidurim, to Lev Shalem. We're on page 264. Invite those who are able to rise for the Baruch Hu, and then you can be seated. ויבורך ומכפר בו ולא ישחית, וירבה לשבת בו ולא יאיר כל חמתו, אדוני הושיע מלך עינינו ביום קורנו ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד. You can be seated. ומעביר יום וביבי לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמפול חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מעריב ערבים. אהבת שלום. ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולם מברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד ברוך שם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת ואמונה כל זאת וקיים עלינו כי הוא נכון. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ובני ישראל לכנו שירה ושמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך ואלי באדוני מי כמוך נהדר בקודש נורא תהילות תוספלה מלכותך ראו בניך בוקעים לפני משה זה עליינו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כיפת אדוני וגילו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום ועמידנו מלכנו לחיים ופרסו לזכת שלומך ותקנין בעצה טובה מלפניך ושאינו למען שמך ושמור צאתנו ואוהינו לחיים ושלום מעתה ועד עולם ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל לעד חסדך אדוני עלינו כאשר יכול.
ברוך אדוני ביום, ברוך אדוני בלילה.
כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי תמלוך בכבוד כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשיו יקרא ויקרא שמי רבה וילמד דברה כרתי וימליך מלכותי בחיי חוף ממכון וחיי לכל בית ישראל בגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן יש שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולימי יברך וישבח ויפאר וישמע מתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לי ללי למי כל ברכתה ושירתה Jewish b'chata v'neglata, Tamiram pilma v'imru amen. Lamidah for the end of Shabbat begins on page 270. 4 insertions and 1 substitution are all marked with between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. If you're still praying your own private Hamidah, please continue at your own pace. Services continue on page 279 at the top, and at the end of Chatzi Kaddish, you're welcome to be seated. Yigdal v'yikadashim hey rapam b'alman divrach yirteviam lich malchutei v'chayim chon v'yimechon v'chayid chol beit Yisrael bagalav v'zman karivim ru amen yishem hey rabav v'rach lilam v'liam haya yitparach v'shabab yipar v'shmam v'yidnaseh v'tadar v'talei v'talal shemei dekudesha b'richu le'ela mikol berchata v'shira tatush v'chata v'nechmata damiram b'yamavim ru amen yino hamadonai Eloheinu aleinu ma'aseh kona aleinu ma'aseh yedenu kona. Hikrain hivenehu imo hanuchi v'tzarach al titzehu v'yachodehu orchim yimasbiyehu v'yarehu b'yishuati orchim yimasbiyehu v'yarehu b'yishuati. Page 216, second paragraph on the page. V'yata kadosh yeshevti lot Yisrael v'karaz el zeh v'hamar kadosh kadosh. V'tisayini ruch v'shmacharai kol rash gadol baruch kevod Adonai mi mekom hon teladu. Adonai himloch le'olam v'hed Adonai v'chatek le'olam v'chein le'olam v'melech. Yivtechu v'chayudehi shemecha ki lo azav tador shech Adonai Adonai chafetz zaman tziko yagdil Torah v'yadir. Page 280. Yitkadal v'kadash shmei rabam yamati v'rak yirtevim lich malchutei b'chaychon v'yamechon v'chayid chol beit Yisrael bagalav v'zman kariv v'imru amen yei shmei rabam v'rach v'yalav olhei amaya yiparach v'yishabaf v'yipar v'yishamav v'nasei v'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shmei dekudesha v'yerichu le'heila le'heila mikol berchata v'shirata v'yishbechata v'nechmata damiram b'yalma v'imru amen titkabat salat ono tanda chol Yisrael kadama v'hon divishmaya v'imru amen yesh lama rabba mitshmaya v'chaim aleinu v'yol Yisrael v'imru amen Osi shalom b'romav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol l'tegru l'adin seber shei shalom Torah Torah Kakatu b'tor tech Adonai yimloch le'olam v'yevnei mar v'hayad Adonai l'melech kol haaretz b'yomahu Yihei Adonai Echad Ushmo Echad. We turn back to 59 for the psalm for the season of awe. L'David Adonai Horim. Lehimanti robetu Adonai be'eretz chayim kaveh el Adonai chazak v'yemetz libecha v'kaveh el Adonai. Mourners Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah ve'almad divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayichon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei techol beit Yisrael b'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru amen yehei shemei rabah mevarach le'olam u'lamei almaya Yitbarach, Vishabach, Vitpa'ar, Vichomam, Vitnaseh, Vitadar, Vitalei, Vitalal, Shemei, Tekudsha, Barichu, Le'ela, Le'ela, Mikol, Berchata, Vishirata, Tushbachata, Venechamata, Damiram, Be'alma, Vimru, Amen, Yehei Shlama, Rabbamin, Shemaya, V'chayim, Aleinu, Ve'al Yisrael, Vimru, Amen, Osei Shalom, Bimromav, Huyaseh Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. In a moment, we'll do Havdalah. A couple of quick announcements. Number one, tomorrow is a fast day, as I was chatting with a few people about earlier. It is a minor fast day, Tzom Gedalia. It begins at sun up, ends at sundown. It's a fast from all food and water for those who are able to follow that. And services begin here for daily minyan at 8 a.m., though sometimes on extra fast days or Torah days, we go earlier, not on a Sunday. On Sunday, we do it at 8 a.m. And we'd really love to have a minion here. I know it's a lot of days of shul in a row, but I also know I have the right captive audience to say, let's make sure, please, that there's a minion here at 8 tomorrow morning. Following that, we have Tashlich. Tashlich takes place at the same place we typically go to in Santa Monica, Lifeguard Tower 26. An email is going out tonight with reminders about it. If you have flowers that are past their prime, some of you have heard me make this announcement a couple times, but if you have flowers that haven't really survived much past Erev Rosh Hashanah, please bring a few of those tomorrow. We have a temporary art project that we're going to be making on the beach, and I'll trade you your cool flower leaves for and petals for a really cool water bottle sticker you can get in return. So we'll go a little bit beach combing along with beach cleanup tomorrow. Let's do Havdalah. We're on page 283 if you want to follow along. Yeah, nine, 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 nine. V'mayne Yeshua, L'Adonai Yeshua, Adonai Tzebaot, Imanu, Niskav Lainu, Elohei Yaakov Selah, Adonai Tzebaot, Asher Yadam Boteach Bach, Adonai Hoshia, Hamelech Yaneinu V'Yom Koreinu, La Yehudim, Hai Tahora, V'Simcha V'Sason Mikar, Keiti Elinu, Kosi Yeshua Tesa, Uv'Shem Adonai Ekra, Yainenai 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 Savri, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Borei, Priya Gafen, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Borei, Minei Besamim. Pass this around, take a sniff. Oh yeah, make sure she gets some. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Borei, Miorei Ha'esh. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Hamavdil ben Kodesh Lechol ben Or Lechoshech B'Yisrael Ha'amim, Ben Yom HaShvi'i, L'Shisha Tevei HaMaseh. Baruch Atah Adonai, Hamavdil ben Kodesh Lechol.
She wants grape juice.
Eliyahu HaNavi, Eliyahu HaTishvi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu HaGiladi, V'mheira v'yameinu, Yavo Eleinu, He Mashiach ben David, He Mashiach ben David. Shavuot Tov, everyone. Yeah.
Shavuot Tov.
Shavuot Tov. So I heard you, Marlies, but who greeted us before?
What? Oh.
I heard somebody before you. Maybe it was somebody in the room.
Right.
I'll touch base with you when I get home to let you know, okay?
Good thing you got rid of it.
Lights back there, please.
Oh yeah, it's a piece of trash. I thought it would get put away.
I was looking for a yarmulke, but
Oh, yarmulke, did you find one?
yeah, I found one. I have so much.